Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to another deep dive where we sift through fascinating insights and really try to distill the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. Today, we're embarking on, well, what I think is a truly captivating financial mystery. We're trying to understand the remarkable saving habits observed in China, and maybe more importantly, what profound lessons we can actually extract from them for our own financial journeys. Just to give you a sense of the scale, okay, imagine a place where people consistently save nearly half of every single dollar they earn. That's right. The gross savings rate in China, it was a staggering 45.9% back in December 2021. Now, let's contrast that with, say, the United States, where our average personal savings rate, it usually hovers somewhere between, 3.5% and maybe 5%. The difference is just, it's enormous.
It really is. Almost a factor of 10.
Exactly. It's genuinely mind-boggling when you actually stop and think about it. So our
Uh,
mission today, it's to move way beyond just those striking numbers. We're going to dig deep into the underlying reasons, the subtle cultural currents and the very practical sort of structural realities that have forged this significant difference. And as we unravel this, we'll discover powerful, actionable insights that you can draw for your own financial life, wherever you happen to live.
yeah, it's not just a small variation, is it? We're looking at a difference that's so vast, it just compels us to ask why. Why is there such a stark contrast in something as fundamental as managing personal finances? It's far too simplistic to just say, oh, they're just, naturally better savers.
Hmm.
The reality, as we'll explore, it's way more nuanced, it's deeply rooted. These habits aren't simply about individual willpower or discipline. Instead, they are profoundly shaped by societal structures, by historical events, and by personal philosophies that, frankly, diverge quite significantly from what many of us might experience in the West. It's a really compelling case study in how deeply context influences behavior.
Right. And this is where it gets genuinely intriguing, I think. Let's start by peeling back the layers of that cultural backdrop, the one that so powerfully shapes these financial behaviors. When we look at many Western societies, and well, especially here in America, we find ourselves often subtly, yeah, but relentlessly, nudged towards consumption. Our whole economic framework, in so many ways, feels like it's built on this foundation of just continuous buying. We're constantly swimming in this environment of sales, tempting discounts, incredibly easy financing options, and let's be honest, that ever-present social pressure, right? Keeping up with the Joneses, the latest car, the bigger house, the newest gadget, it's a cycle, an almost unconscious pattern of acquiring and spending. And this emphasis on consumption, particularly in the US, it's not some modern accident. It's got deep roots, historically speaking. You think about the post-World War II era, right after the Great Depression. Back then, consumption wasn't just encouraged, it was seen as, well, almost patriotic. People were actively urged to spend, to buy, to sort of participate in the economy, to stimulate growth, pull the nation out of the doldrums. This historical imperative, plus, evolving economic incentives over generations, it's cultivated a profoundly consumer-driven mindset in many of us. It's this powerful cultural script we often don't even realize we're following.
That historical piece is so critical. Because when we shift our gaze to China, the emphasis is just fundamentally different. It goes beyond mere preference. It's an ingrained, almost sacred respect for saving money. This profound orientation seems driven by two key forces. First, what money fundamentally represents to people in Chinese society. And second, the country's unique demographic landscape, which has played just an outsized role. A really striking manifestation of this cultural difference is a pervasive aversion to debt and financing. In China, very often you'll find people prefer buying things outright, with cash, rather than taking on debt through loans or, those extended payment plans we see everywhere here. And this isn't just a pragmatic financial strategy. It feels like a deeply rooted cultural thing, a preference for financial independence, avoiding future obligations, wanting immediate ownership. It speaks to a deep sense of self-reliance, doesn't it?
It really does. That aversion to debt, preferring to buy outright, that's a massive differentiator compared to, Western economies often built on credit. But it makes me wonder, how early does that mindset kick in? Is it something people consciously adopt as adults, or is it ingrained much earlier? Like from childhood, it really seems like from a very young age, kids in China are taught that saving money isn't just a good idea financially. It's something honorable, a virtue to cultivate.
Oh, absolutely. It starts in childhood, woven right into family life and cultural traditions. A perfect example is the custom of lucky money.
Mhm.
Kids often get money, usually in those vibrant red envelopes, right? For New Year's, birthdays. But crucially, it's not just gift money to be spent impulsively on toys or candy. Parents actively, consistently encourage their kids to save it. This isn't just a casual suggestion. It's like a foundational lesson in financial prudence, respect for resources, and the importance of wealth creation. It goes deep into their language, their everyday cultural expressions. During major holidays, for instance, instead of just Happy New Year, it's incredibly common to hear the greeting Gong Xi Fa Cai,
Hmm.
which, and this might surprise some listeners, directly translates to something like, hope you get rich.
Wow, really that direct.
Yeah. It's not just a casual wish. It powerfully reflects a core societal value that openly links wealth with well-being, prosperity, and, yes, success. And that societal validation of wealth, that's another critical cultural pillar. You can see the profound importance of money and how people in Chinese society generally regard those who have substantial wealth. Individuals with significant financial resources are widely, almost universally, seen as successful. Wealth is viewed as a genuinely good thing to accumulate, not just for personal comfort, but as a marker of achievement, capability. And being successful that way often brings its own societal perks, respect, influence. This pervasive cultural validation creates a very strong, almost intrinsic motivator for saving and accumulating assets. Way beyond just personal needs or desires, it's about reputation, standing in the community.
Okay, so if we pull back and think about the implications for saving, it's clear that beyond these deep cultural factors, there's this equally significant demographic story, one that has fundamentally shaped saving habits in China. And this story largely revolves around a policy many of us have heard of, at least vaguely, the one-child policy. This huge policy was first put in place, late 70s, early 80s, primarily as this drastic measure to curb what they saw as unsustainable population growth. And it stayed in effect, profoundly shaping society until 2016.
And that policy undeniably raised some very difficult, very intense societal pressures for families. If a family had more than one child, they usually faced a hefty financial fine, a penalty designed to enforce compliance. But the implications went way beyond just money, even more significantly. If those fines weren't paid, the second child couldn't be registered in China's household registration system, the hukou.
Right, the hukou, I've heard of that. What did that mean, practically?
Imagine the weight of that for parents. Without hukou registration, their child would be effectively ineligible for crucial fundamental services, like access to public health care, and maybe most critically, public education. This administrative exclusion basically made unregistered children second-class citizens, a powerful deterrent for families thinking about having more than one child. So unsurprisingly, this policy led to a dramatic, sharp decline in birth rates. Families were powerfully incentivized to stick to the one-child limit. But the policy also had a much darker unintended consequence, a tragic increase in sex-selective abortions. In Chinese culture, there's historically been this strong preference for boys, largely because sons traditionally inherit the family name, property, seen as primary caregivers for aging parents.
That traditional view, right?
Exactly. That deeply rooted preference, combined with the severe limitation of a one-child policy, led many families to try and, well, optimize for male births, hoping to secure their family line and future support with their single allowed child. The devastating result was a significantly skewed male-to-female birth ratio. At its worst, it reached an alarming 122 males for every 100 females born.
122 to 100, that's a huge imbalance.
Huge. And in general economic and social terms, when you have a significant imbalance like that, far more men than women, it inevitably creates a fundamental supply and demand issue, particularly in the marriage market.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. With a surplus of men competing for a comparatively smaller pool of women, for a man to really stand out, to be seen as a desirable marriage candidate, being viewed as successful became absolutely paramount. And as we already discussed, in China, success is often inextricably linked to financial prosperity, having money, owning property, being able to provide. This created an incredibly potent financial incentive for young men to save aggressively, accumulate substantial assets. It made them more attractive in a highly competitive marriage landscape. And the one-child policy had another, simpler, but equally impactful effect on savings. Families, now mostly having only one child, naturally had fewer mouths to feed, fewer kids to clothe and educate.
It makes sense. Fewer expenses.
Precisely. This allowed parents to accumulate significantly more savings themselves, as their expenses were substantially reduced. So you kind of had this double whammy effect. Parents could save more because they had fewer dependents, and young men were strongly motivated to save large sums to become desirable partners in that skewed demographic environment.
Wow, so it's this complex web of culture and demographics really driving things. But beyond those deeper societal currents, there's yet another practical, structural reason for this intense focus on personal savings. And it's something that hits very close to home for many of us in the West, unlike many of us who might diligently contribute to retirement accounts like a 401k or an IRA. Those common long-term investment vehicles that are sort of cornerstones of financial planning here, those exact mechanisms just aren't as prevalent or robust in China in the same widespread, accessible way. And that fundamentally changes the whole landscape of personal responsibility, doesn't it?
That's a crucial point. While a pension system does exist in China, what's striking is that a significant portion of the population seems quite cautious about its long-term viability, whether it will genuinely be sufficient to sustain them comfortably in retirement. This pervasive uncertainty about the robustness of government safety nets, it directly translates into an incredibly strong personal drive to save. There's a deeply ingrained sense of self-reliance, personal responsibility. People are acutely aware that they themselves bear the primary burden for future costs, healthcare, higher education for their kids, their own financial security in old age. They understand they can't fully rely on an extensive government safety net for all these critical needs, which naturally pushes them to save rigorously, consistently, for these essential future expenses. And this reliance on personal savings, it's amplified by the types of investment vehicles commonly available and used there. While the Chinese financial market is definitely evolving, many citizens still primarily use traditional bank deposits for long-term growth.
We also see a very significant chunk of wealth channeled into real estate, which has historically been seen as a secure, appreciating asset. But robust, widely accessible, diversified investment products like the mutual funds or broad market index funds that underpin many 401ks here, they're still growing in prevalence, but aren't as pervasive for the average person. This means the responsibility for wealth creation and long-term security falls much more squarely on individual savings habits and direct investments rather than structured employer plans. And this raises an important question for you, listening right now. If your own social safety nets, your healthcare, your retirement fund, maybe even access to education suddenly felt uncertain, how much more intensely would you focus on building up your personal savings? It's a really powerful thought experiment, I think. It underscores the motivations we're talking about.
Absolutely. So, okay, we've covered the why behind China's incredible saving habits, the deep culture, the demographics, the practical safety net realities. Now, let's pivot. Let's get into the how. What are the actionable strategies they actually use? The main secret to this brilliant savings is it isn't some complex financial trick, or some hidden investment strategy only if you know about. On the contrary, it's incredibly practical, remarkably straightforward, and most importantly, it's something you can absolutely adopt for your own financial life, having every single dollar accounted for. I'm reminded of my own father, actually. Coming from a similar background, he always knew exactly where his money was going, down to the last cent. It wasn't about being stingy just for the sake of it. It was about absolute awareness, complete control, and purposeful allocation.
That level of meticulousness, it begs the question, right? How do they achieve that kind of accountability, that precision with their finances? The system at play, basically at its core, is what we in Western financial circles call zero-based budgeting. The fundamental principle is deceptively simple but incredibly powerful. Your monthly income minus all your monthly expenses, and this is key. It includes your dedicated savings, your investments. Any debt repayment you're making should ultimately equal zero at the end of the month. The key isn't to spend every dollar, it's to give every single cent a specific job, a predefined destination. It demands intentionality.
Okay, so give every dollar a job. Walk us through that. How does it look in practice?
Sure. To make it really concrete, let's use a hypothetical. Imagine your monthly income after taxes is, say, $4,000. With a zero-based budget, you wouldn't just pay bills and then hope there's money left over at the end. Instead, you would meticulously map out every single category for that $4,000. You'd allocate specific amounts for your rent or mortgage, groceries, transport, other basic needs. But then, critically, you'd also have explicit line items for your savings goals. Maybe $500 for an emergency fund, $300 towards a down payment, $200 for student loans, maybe $400 earmarked for investments. When you add up all those allocations covering both your spending and your saving and investing, the total should come out to exactly $4,000, leaving $0 unassigned. This disciplined approach forces you to make conscious, deliberate decisions about where every dollar goes before you even spend it. It kind of eliminates that mystery spending.
Right, the where did my money go feeling at the end of the month.
Exactly. And the absolute cornerstone of success with zero-based budgeting is just brutal honesty.
honesty about your current spending habits. You have to be realistic, not just aspirational, about where your money is actually flowing right now. A really practical tip for anyone thinking about adopting this system. Track your variable expenses. Groceries, dining out, entertainment, personal care. Track them for at least 3 months. This gives you an accurate average, letting you build a much more realistic and therefore effective budget. The true genius of this system, I think, is that it doesn't impose arbitrary spending limits. It doesn't dictate how much you should spend in each category based on some external one-size-fits-all rulebook. Instead, it's about empowering you to understand your own financial flow and then allocate it intentionally, aligning every dollar with your personal priorities, your long-term goals. It provides incredible clarity, powerful control, and a really profound sense of purpose for your money.
That detailed budgeting approach, it's undeniably powerful. But beyond just the mechanics of the zero-based budget, you mentioned there are 4 additional sort of deeply ingrained behavioral factors, things the Chinese prioritize that contribute to saving so much. These sound less about numbers, more about mindset, but still incredibly effective.
That's right, 4 key priorities.
Okay, what's the first one?
First up, a very strong emphasis on humility when it comes to material possessions and public displays of wealth. The vast majority of Chinese people, especially those focused on building wealth, seem to aim to maintain a humble profile, to quite literally fly under the radar. This means there's often an active, conscious choice not to try and impress others with their wealth or obvious status symbols. It's more of an internal focus, not an external performance.
So, substance over show, basically.
Exactly. This approach translates directly into actionable financial decisions. What's insightful here is that this means actively avoiding luxury products or anything that serves primarily as an overt status symbol. The focus is profoundly on practicality over fleeting prestige. You generally won't see a widespread cultural compulsion to get the newest, most expensive car or the latest designer clothes just as a way to signify success or project an image. Instead, the focus stays internal, building genuine personal financial security, long-term stability, rather than pouring resources into depreciating assets or fleeting external impressions. This single mindset shift alone, think about it, it has the potential to free up an enormous amount of money and even mental energy that might otherwise get siphoned into chasing external validation. It fosters a different relationship with possessions.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Avoiding the status game. What's the second factor?
The second factor is a truly powerful, almost foundational concept. It speaks volumes about their relationship with money. When income is earned, the deep-seated principle is to try and live off a remarkably small percentage of it. This isn't just about cutting a few expenses. It's a profound principle for how money should be managed once it comes in the door.
Living off a small percentage, like the 10.1 rule you mentioned.
Precisely. This specific mindset really brings the power of perspective into focus, especially when we consider the background of people who've shaped this philosophy, like the speaker's father you mentioned earlier. He recounted growing up in Shanghai amid extreme poverty, days where he literally couldn't afford food, went hungry. When he could afford something, it was often just a plain, tasteless steamed bun, Matanto, the absolute cheapest thing available.
That's incredibly harsh.
It is. And because of that harrowing childhood, when he finally started earning a regular income, he adopted this incredibly rigorous personal rule.
Yeah.
For every $10 earned, try to live off just $1. Now, realistically, could he always stick to that exact 10% ratio? No, probably not, especially early on. There were definitely times he had to spend $6, $7, $8, even $9 out of $10 just for basic needs.
Sure, life happens.
But the principle itself, the deep motivation behind it, that remained unwavering. For him, saving wasn't just about building traditional wealth. It was a fundamental drive for survival, a visceral determination to ensure he'd never again face that gnawing hunger, that uncertainty. This simple but incredibly powerful principle, try to save as much as humanly possible, live off as little as necessary, it stuck with him. And it's a mindset many others in China, often shaped by similar experiences of scarcity or economic volatility, have adopted. It is, undeniably, an incredibly powerful rule if your main goal is building wealth quickly and ensuring financial resilience. However, and this is crucial for you, the listener, to understand, this type of extreme frugality can sometimes foster what psychologists call a scarcity mindset.
A scarcity mindset? What's that exactly?
It's that persistent feeling of never having enough, even when your financial reality has dramatically improved. So as you earn more and build genuine security, it becomes really important to acknowledge this potential psychological tendency and consciously work to shift towards an abundance mindset. This allows your hard-earned financial security to translate not just into stored wealth, but also into deserved comfort, opportunities, joy in your life. Finding that healthy balance between saving for the future and enjoying the present.
That's a really profound point about balance. Okay, so we have humility, living off a small percentage. What's the third factor?
The third wise lesson, a practical filter they apply to purchases, is making a truly sharp distinction between needs versus wants. The philosophy is pretty clear. If you genuinely need something, especially if it relates directly to your health, safety, or fundamental well-being, then by all means, it's considered smart, strategic to spend on it. It's about being discerning, not just automatically cheap.
Okay, so prioritize needs, especially health-related ones. How does that play out? Well, connecting this to the bigger picture, it means making smart, reasonable choices that prioritize long-term well-being and genuine utility over fleeting desires. For instance, let's say you're debating between a flimsy, uncomfortable desk chair that might cause back issues later and a more expensive but ergonomic chair that supports your posture and boosts productivity. Opting for the ergonomic chair is often seen as a worthwhile investment in your health and long-term well-being. That could reasonably be classified as a need. But of course, the wisdom is not to take this logic to an extreme. Everyone needs clothes, right?
But that doesn't automatically mean you need to buy designer clothes from high-end brands just because they're technically better quality or more prestigious. The overall idea is to be reasonable, pragmatic with your spending. Make intelligent choices that serve a genuine purpose while saving diligently where you can without compromising essential needs. Now, when it comes to wants, those things you desire but don't strictly need for survival or core well-being, the principle is still to ensure that if you do make such a purchase, you're going to get truly excellent value and utility from it over a long time.
Getting value even from wants, like that wallet example.
Exactly. Let's say you decide to buy a $350 high-quality leather wallet because you admire its craftsmanship, durability, and you've wanted one for a while. The underlying philosophy encourages you to use that wallet for an exceptionally long time, effectively amortizing its cost over many years. If you could realistically use that wallet for, say, 5 years without replacing it, then you take the $350 cost, spread it over 1,825 days, and it comes out to less than 20 cents a day. The core lesson isn't never spend money, because spending is inevitable. Rather, it's about cultivating a mindset of reasonableness and frugality in most financial decisions, especially with wants. Ensuring discretionary spending provides lasting value, serves you well for a long time, making it a thoughtful investment, not an impulsive splurge.
That focus on longevity and value, even for wants, is a powerful shift. Okay, last factor. You said it seems simple, but is a huge contributor.
Yes. The fourth one, and it might seem universal, almost too simple, but it is an absolutely huge contributor to their high savings rates.
Yeah.
The consistent practice of staying home and eating at home. Fundamentally, limiting dining out is just a massive lever for saving money.
Yeah, we all kind of know eating out is expensive, but is it really that big a deal?
It truly is, consistently applied. What's fascinating here is the deep, almost intuitive understanding that dining out significantly inflates food costs, often by a very large margin compared to preparing meals at home. In many Chinese households, like the speaker's upbringing you mentioned, eating out was rare, maybe once every other week, often less. It certainly wasn't the default for daily meals or even regular social gatherings. Instead, group dinners enjoyed at home were the much more common preferred way to socialize with family and friends. Eating out was reserved almost exclusively for special occasions, holidays, significant celebrations, which inherently reinforces its cost and its value as a treat and indulgence rather than just an everyday habit. This seemingly simple choice, when consistently applied across the society, it frees up a truly substantial amount of money that can then be channeled directly into savings, accumulating significant wealth over time.
Okay, wow. Let's try and unpack all of this together. We've gone on a really fascinating deep dive today. We explored those profound cultural underpinnings, that deep respect for money, the aversion to debt, the early saving education. We unveiled the significant demographic forces, particularly the complex legacy of the one-child policy and its ripple effects on family finances, the marriage market. And crucially, we broke down the tangible, practical strategies, the discipline of zero-based budgeting, those 4 key behavioral priorities: avoiding status symbols, living off a small percentage, sharply distinguishing needs versus wants with a focus on value, and consciously choosing to eat at home. What we've seen is this captivating interplay, isn't it? Powerful intrinsic motivation shaped by history and culture, combined with very practical discipline application in daily life.
Absolutely. And this entire exploration, I think, raises an incredibly important question for you, the listener. How might these powerful principles, even though rooted in a different cultural context, translate and apply within your own financial landscape? Could implementing a rigorous, zero-based budget offer you a clearer picture, greater control over where every single one of your dollars is going? What might your version of that 10.1 rule look like? Or more broadly, how could you challenge yourself to live further below your means, consciously saving a larger percentage of your income? We really invite you to reflect deeply. How can you redefine your needs versus your wants with more discipline, more intentionality, focusing on lasting value? And how much more financial breathing room, how much more savings could you cultivate by truly embracing eating at home more often? Making dining at a special occasion, not just routine. These aren't just cultural observations. They feel like actionable blueprints for financial empowerment, don't they?
They really do. This deep dive today truly highlights how deeply ingrained cultural values, historical contexts, past experiences, how they can collectively and profoundly shape our financial habits. It's not just about what you earn or even how much. It's fundamentally about how you perceive money, how you value it, and how meticulously, how purposefully you choose to manage every single dollar that comes into your life.
Yeah.
It's a powerful lesson in intentionality, in understanding the narratives around money that shape our decisions.
And if we connect this to the really big picture, consider this. What are the broader societal implications? What happens in a culture that prioritizes saving so highly, almost as a foundational virtue, versus one that primarily emphasizes and drives consumption? What does that deep cultural difference mean, not just for individual bank accounts, but for long-term economic stability, for personal resilience in uncertain times, and even for collective well-being, the financial legacy we pass on to future generations? It's a thought that extends far beyond the individual balance sheet, you know?
It really does. And as you reflect on that, we invite you to continue your own deep dive. Think about how these broader cultural narratives around money, maybe from your own background, your family history, the wider society you live in, might be silently shaping your own financial behaviors, often without you even realizing it. Something profound to mull over until our next deep dive.